things will never be the same because the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
Dwayne Johnson said that himself, and he turned out to be right, just not the way he meant it. Within days of Black Adam hitting theaters, the hierarchy of power in the DC universe really did change, completely. Dwayne Johnson simply wasn't in the new one. He'd been saying some version of that line for almost 2 years straight. The Times Square reveal, the rap tweet, the trailer, about a movie he'd spent, in his own words, 15 years fighting to make, turned out to be a promise about somebody else's coronation. This isn't really a story about one bad movie. It's about an instinct. Never lose a fight on screen, never share power with a co-star, never let the audience catch you, not in control of something. Black Adam is just the loudest place it shows up. There are 3 more, and by the time we get back to Times Square, you'll see exactly why this instinct cost him more than any bad review ever could.
Oh, shit. Oh, my God.
According to the Wall Street Journal, a no-lose clause has become a real fixture of modern action contracts. Language specifying that a star's character can't be shown genuinely, losing a fight, taking real punishment, or looking beaten on screen. The practice is widely credited to Vin Diesel, who's said to have tracked every hit his character absorbed, almost like a scoreboard, with an actual system for logging it. Multiple reports since have claimed Johnson built a version of the same protection into his own deals. Really think about what that does to every single action sequence he's in. The whole mechanism of suspense in a fight scene is the possibility that the hero might not win this one. Take that possibility off the table before a single frame gets shot, and you're not watching a fight anymore. You're watching a formality with good lighting. Watch Hobbs and Shaw with that in mind. Watch Rampage. Watch San Andreas. Buildings come down on him, trucks hit him at highway speed. A genetically engineered monster the size of a building throws him through solid concrete, and every single time, he shakes it off, flexes, and delivers a line. There's no scene in any of these films where you genuinely believe he might not make it up. Compare that to literally any actor playing a character the audience isn't sure will survive the next 10 minutes. That doubt is the entire engine of tension in an action sequence. Johnson removed the engine and kept driving on charisma alone, and for a long stretch of his career, charisma was enough to cover for it. There's even a wrinkle to it that has nothing to do with his own films. Apparently, this same clause complicates things whenever he shares a scene with another equally protected co-star, since 2 contractually unbeatable men can't both walk away the loser. Keep that in mind. It matters again in a minute, in a much bigger room. That's the small version of this instinct, protecting a single scene. Now watch what it looks like when he tries to protect an entire universe, the exact promise you just heard him make in Times Square. Black Adam's arch-rival, in the comics, has always been Shazam. It's not a minor detail, it's the entire point of the character, the same way the Joker only fully makes sense, standing next to Batman. The Rap ran a detailed investigative piece on what actually happened behind that movie, and it isn't flattering. Johnson turned down the chance to have Black Adam introduced inside the first Shazam film, choosing instead to hold the character back for his own standalone movie. Fair enough on its own, plenty of actors want a real introduction, not a cameo. But once Black Adam went into production, Johnson spent nearly the entire press tour talking not about Shazam, his character's actual comic book nemesis, but about a hypothetical showdown with Henry Cavill's Superman, a character from a completely different corner of the DC universe, who had nothing to do with Black Adam's own story. The then head of DC Films, Walter Hamada, had already vetoed a Cavill cameo. Johnson went over his head anyway, pitching Warner Bros. Co-CEOs directly until he got a yes. One Hollywood executive put it to the rap in blunt terms, that Johnson wants to extend his brand and make a brand centered on himself. It goes further than press interviews too. That same investigation claims Johnson vetoed a post-credits scene, originally set to show Shazam getting recruited by Hawkman and the Justice Society, a scene meant to physically connect the two franchises on screen. Instead, that connective tissue between DC's two most obvious rivals never made it into either film. Johnson reportedly turned down an offer to cameo in Shazam: Fury of the Gods 2. A Hollywood Reporter insider summed up the whole Cavill maneuver in one line. Cavill, in their words, was a pawn in Dwayne's failed attempt to control a piece of DC. Zachary Levi, the actor playing Shazam, spent the following months publicly fielding questions about a crossover that had already been killed behind the scenes before his own sequel even opened. Black Adam finishes its run at roughly $393 million worldwide, against a budget reported as high as $260 million, plus tens of millions more in marketing, nowhere near what the film needed to break even. Warner Brothers installed James Gunn and Peter Safran to rebuild DC Studios from scratch, within days of that opening weekend. Not months, days. The Superman showdown never happens. The Shazam connection never happens. The character he'd spent 15 years fighting to make gets written out of the new universe entirely, and the Shazam franchise itself never gets another movie either. He spent an entire press tour trying to pick his own opponent, instead of the one the comics had already written for him, and walked away having lost to both. And if Black Adam was Johnson trying to handpick his own final boss, Fast 5 is where he first learned he could pull that off, by walking into someone else's franchise and slowly, patiently, becoming the main character of it. Luke Hobbs shows up in Fast 5 in 2011 as a supporting character, a federal agent hunting Vin Diesel's crew, and within 3 movies he's not supporting anything anymore. Go back and watch the earlier films in this franchise. They're built on stripped-down street racing, stolen cars, and Diesel's constant, almost liturgical insistence that this crew is a family. It's the entire emotional spine of the series. Now look at where Hobbs takes it. By 2019's Hobbs and Shaw, the movie Johnson spun off for himself. The street racing is basically gone, replaced by a genetically enhanced supervillain, a globe-spanning spy plot, and a finale where Hobbs, his estranged brothers, and a whole convoy of chained-together trucks drag an armed helicopter out of the sky over a Samoan cliffside. It's a great stunt, genuinely. It's also about as far from a quarter-mile street race as this franchise has ever traveled. There's a piece of this that most people already half remember, even if they never clocked why it mattered. By 2016, filming The Fate of the Furious, the tension between Johnson and Diesel had stopped being a rumor and started showing up on the call sheet. Johnson posted a message on Instagram thanking his female co-stars, then calling out unnamed male co-stars as chicken, ending on 2 words that are still quoted today: candy asses. He never named Diesel. He didn't need to. The internet finished that sentence for him inside the hour. And here's the detail that turns this from gossip into something that physically reshapes a film. Johnson later confirmed to Vanity Fair that he'd only agree to keep filming if he and Diesel shared 0 scenes together. 0. In a franchise whose entire brand, repeated in nearly every trailer, is togetherness. By 2019, it's formal enough that Johnson spins off into his own Hobbs and Shaw movie, tagging the announcement with a hashtag that basically reads, "No candy asses allowed." So you get 2 things happening in the same decade. The actor who joined this series as a guest star reshapes its entire DNA away from the very thing that made it beloved in the first place, while simultaneously refusing to occupy the same frame as the man who's supposedly the family's patriarch. That's not a spin-off, drifting from its source material by accident. That's a hijacking with the paperwork to prove it. And honestly, if you are enjoying this video, that's a good moment to like and subscribe. None of that, the contracts, the DC maneuvering, the slow-motion franchise takeover, has anything to do with what's actually happening on his face once the cameras start rolling. And that might be the quietest problem of the bunch.
There are 3 things that you need to know about understanding girls. Take it easy.
Go pull those 4 films up side by side. Different decades, different directors, different studios, allegedly different characters. And yet, over and over, you get the same khaki-adjacent adventurer uniform, the same wide, capable stance, the same single raised eyebrow doing the emotional heavy lifting, in scene after scene. It's such a signature move that Hobbs & Shaw itself makes a direct joke about it on screen. His own franchise poking fun at the fact that the eyebrow is basically a second character at this point. One breakdown of his career, from a site that tracks his choices as a leading man, put it plainly, he tends to play the same hyper-capable man of action, wearing close to the same outfit, film after film, and that sameness trains audiences to expect exactly one thing from him before the movie even starts. A review of that same Hobbs & Shaw stretch went further, arguing Johnson had, by that point, mostly stopped adding depth to his roles at all, giving audiences whatever he assumed they already wanted instead of anything new. That matters more than it sounds like it should, because visual repetition breaks immersion in a very specific way. You're not watching Frank Skipper Wolf navigate the Amazon in Jungle Cruise. You're watching Dwayne Johnson do the eyebrow again, this time with a boat. The costume changes. The performance underneath it barely does. And when an actor's face is doing the same 3 moves across every genre, action, comedy, family adventure, prestige thriller, the audience stops reacting to the character and starts recognizing the actor, which is the opposite of what a performance is supposed to do. There's one recent exception worth naming honestly, and it almost proves the point instead of undercutting it. In The Smashing Machine, he drops the eyebrow, the khaki, all of it, to play a real MMA fighter falling apart from addiction, and it earned him a 15-minute standing ovation at Venice, which just confirms the range was sitting there the whole time. He simply spent 2 decades choosing not to spend it. So line all 4 of these up. The contract, the crossover he sabotaged, the franchise he quietly took over, the eyebrow doing the same job since 2011, and it stops being 4 separate complaints. It's one instinct, wearing a new costume every time. Never let the audience see you at risk of losing. That instinct built an enormous career. It also capped how good that career was allowed to become, because an actor who's contractually, structurally, and visually incapable of losing is also an actor the audience can never really worry about. And without worry, there's no suspense. Without risk, there's no performance worth remembering. One declaration in Times Square, about a hierarchy of power that never actually changed for him. That's all it took to see the entire shape of this career, once you knew where to look. Tell me in the comments which one of these 4 does the most damage. The contract, the DC power grab, the franchise hijack, or the eyebrow. I've got a ranking, and I don't think it's the one most people pick first. See you next week.